Robots driving high-speed Formula cars sounds like a failed science fiction movie, but unfortunately, this is happening right now, and it could change Formula 1 forever. Artificial intelligence has made its way into motorsport, and it's about to get as crazy as you'd expect.
How did you find them? How did you find the people? How did you put those teams together?
These high-speed, highly advanced cars are driving on their own, laying down crazy lap times, and even racing against each other. All this got me thinking, as F1 fans, should we be scared?
You know, in terms of each race, we need to go incrementally beyond where it's gone before.
How's it going to impact the series we all love? Will it ruin it forever? I'd love to hear your opinion after watching the video. I'm going to show you all you need to know about the world's latest motorsport series. Even though you'd think some F1 drivers were badly coded robots, yeah, I'm looking at you two. A robot never actually drove a fast single-seater, until now. There's a series called the A2RL. Catchy name, guys. And it's based on self-driving cars powered by artificial intelligence. Seriously, no drivers, no computers. They're fully autonomous, so they drive and race without any human intervention at all. The first thing I thought when I heard the news was, well, that's exactly what I don't want to see. But then I thought about it again. The reason? I love F1 and all motorsports really, and love watching my favorite drivers compete. I wanted to see if this could give me a new reason to watch motorsport. Obviously, the racing has to be good for a start, and I'll get into that in a moment, but first I want to tell you a bit about the cars. I'm not gonna lie, the cars themselves are impressive. We all love fast, loud single-seaters, and that's exactly what the A2RL has. They're based on the Dallara SF23 chassis that's used in Japanese Super Formula, a turbocharged engine with 550 brake horsepower, slick tires, 185 miles per hour, and because they're made of carbon and biocarbon, they only weigh 660 kilograms. It's not like it's some Formula 4 car they're messing around with. They're literally the second fastest in the world. The Super Formula pole time at Suzuka this year was 135.789, and F1's was 128.197. Not exactly a million miles away, at least on paper. But when you understand how fast these cars are with a human at the wheel, imagine putting one in the hands of a robot. Instead of a driver sitting in the cockpit, there's one big computer called the center stack. It gets fed data from the car's innovative sensors, which it has a lot of. Each lap a car finishes, depending on the track length, it generates tens of gigabytes of data from all its sensors. There's a GPS system that's used to self-localize the car. It's actually a dual antenna GPS with one antenna on the nose and the second on the virtual reality camera pod near the roll hoop. It lets the car know where it is on track very precisely, which they say is within tens of centimeters. That's kind of okay, I guess. I mean, in motorsports, 1 millimeter makes a huge difference if you're talking about car setup. So tens of centimeters is actually a lot. That's obviously going to get lower as things improve. Mixed with radar sensors on the car, they send electromagnetic waves into the air that bounce back off obstacle. The car counts how long it takes for a wave to be sent out, bounce off an obstacle, and be picked up by the sensor again. So the car can estimate how far away it is from the object. So these cars are kind of like high-tech bats. They have LiDAR sensors too. Yeah, more sensors, and they send laser lights out from the car. It counts how long it takes to bounce back off objects, sort of like the radar sensors. But there's a difference here. What's cool about the LiDAR is the way it uses the data. It generates a dynamic 3D picture of everything around the car. And because it does this hundreds of times per second, it can do it for moving obstacles. Yeah, even the other cars, no matter what speed they're traveling at. To be honest though, do we want to watch this? It makes it seem like a real-life video game, and it takes the fun out of the wheel-to-wheel action we see in F1.
If they have goggles, they can actually hop into the car and have a VR experience.
So there's no human driver, but a human can drive it. I love that.
I'm gonna come back to that shortly, but I want you to have all the facts before I start bashing this new series. So each car has 7 cameras, 6 at the front, 1 at the back. They use them for a system called camera lock that can detect when there's an overtake. The center stack in the cockpit is where all this info goes. It processes the data from the sensors in the camera and uses it to make decisions. Decisions like when to brake, how much to turn in, and if it should try and overtake or not. These decisions happen extremely quickly. Well, kinda quickly anyway. You'll see what I mean in a moment when I show you the actual racing. Before wondering if the racing is good enough though, I had to take a step back and ask myself a few questions. What am I really watching? Which parts am I supposed to be paying attention to? How are the cars and teams different from each other? Why are you not subscribed yet? Firstly, I figured out that the teams are given the exact same Dallara chassis. Not only that, but they can't even change the setup. The series has a technical partner called Aspire that controls everything about the cars. The engine management, the setup, the tire pressures, everything. Unlike other motorsports, these aren't what teams are using to compete with each other. So where's the fun? Well, they only have control over one thing. It's not about who designs and builds the best cars, it's about who writes the best code. Yeah, I know. So each team gets an empty center stack computer to write their code on, which is basically the battleground in AI racing. When the teams are handed the cars, they're already able to drive autonomously, but it's up to the teams to write better code. This determines how the car will process the data, hopefully making it more reactive, more intelligent, and faster.
The aim and the battleground is all about the coding, the computer that sits inside the cockpit and connects to several hydraulic actuators. Those are the arms and legs of the AI driver. They control each brake disc and brake caliper independently, and the sensor stack also connects to a mechanical steering process, an electronic motor which connects directly into this steering rack, allowing the front wheels to change direction.
Imagine drivers being able to brake absolutely perfectly at every corner.
I am stupid. I am stupid.
Just sounds like a recipe for even more boring races. Let's just hope it doesn't get too good. So to answer my own question, what you're watching is a lot different to what we're used to. Even though the tech, the car's specs, and the idea sounds innovative, does it make for good racing? Well, honestly, not really. First of all, they tested all systems with smaller remote-controlled cars and held programs for the engineers to help them practice. A tiny RC car and a super Formula car have a couple of differences though. One of the engineers said,
We started in November, I think. And then we had weekly workshops or bi-weekly workshops where they would elaborate more on the code that they provided us, the base code, which is basically the foundation that we need to drive the autonomous racing car.
They worked with this to start improving their code and used it to pass an obstacle avoidance test. The first race of the proper cars happened at the Yas Marina circuit on April the 27th. With 8 laps, it wasn't the longest race ever, but it was more than enough. It gave us enough info to figure out the state of the series. Firstly, the pole time was 2.653. The F1 pole time in 2023 was 123.445, so the AI is about 30 seconds off the pace. Well, during qualifying, it was a struggle for some of them to even complete a single flying lap.
Rather slowly, tentative lap. Oh!
Get the pole position back. This final, they need a good half a lap. Oh no!
Oh, they're off through the left-hander, approaching the back straight. They needed this lap to count, and the car has come to a halt. The team can't believe it.
It's hard not to laugh, but it shows how hard it must be for the teams. Still, it wouldn't inspire you to stick your road car into autopilot and take a nap.
Brother, what's that, brother?
The race itself wasn't much better. 4 cars took to the track, and if you tuned in for fast, high adrenaline racing, you would have been tuning out just as quickly. The first 2 laps were under safety car, seemingly for safety. Whose safety, I don't know, but it didn't do much to get me excited. To be fair though, it was meant to be warm-up laps, but as you'll see shortly, it looks like they didn't do a very good job at it. One of the hardest parts in normal motorsports is managing both the brakes and tire temps. F1 drivers have ridiculous skill in sensing these things, and it's one of the things that allows them to push their cars to the very limit. It's hard to imagine a robot doing this, especially when they're nowhere near the limit by doing things like this.
The Formula car can't get up to 300 kilometers an hour, but there's a spin, there's a screech. It's polymove. It's Eva round into the chicane.
This happened to the leader on lap 4 and caused a yellow flag. The other cars knew not to overtake under yellow, but they completely stopped on track for some reason. When the race got going again, they completed the 8 laps, and the team called TUM won. It was a race without any proper overtakes, or potential for overtakes. So if you ever feel useless, just remember these cars have sensors that can detect when they're overtaking. Maybe next time. Until then though, what's the point of this series? What's the point of spending tens of millions of dollars setting up a new sport and competing when they can't even overtake each other? Well, it's basically a big science experiment. Not everything's going to be brilliant straight away, and that's not what they're trying to do either. These things take time to get right. Just look at Formula E. It took them years to build cars that could do a full race on a single battery. In the meantime, it's proving ground for new technology. Pretty much everything in today's world is over-engineered. Imagine this thing had the technology from one of these autonomous race cars after it's been researched and developed for 5 years. If they can make the cars race each other at 185 miles per hour without any problems, imagine how easy it would be for a little shuttle bus to drive around a city at 30 miles per hour without hitting anything. How is it going to affect our sport? And when? It's one of those coulda, woulda, shoulda questions. Let's face it, the technology is going to be here someday, and we'll see these AIs racing each other properly. With the rate AI is improving, it'll probably be sooner than we want to think about. For that reason, I think it could replace F1, but it won't. When you think about it for a second, some of the potential situations are frightening. AI could actually plan races in advance. What I mean is, imagine watching a race where F1 management or the FIA had control over the outcome. Imagine you were watching a race and thinking it was great, but not realizing that it was all set up from the beginning. Or imagine a race where something crazy and unexpected happened, but it's simply written in advance. The thing is, F1 is as much about the people as it is about the machinery. It's nearly all about the people. Drive to Survive proved that by showcasing some of the brilliant characters in the paddock. It's the people that make it exciting, unpredictable, and most importantly, real. A robot definitely can't replicate that. Or could it? Maybe AI could become so intelligent that it could create drivers and characters that are even better than what we have already. Maybe it could make the perfect race weekends that entertain us more than we thought possible. Maybe it could even make it seem real. At the end of the day though, it still wouldn't be real. But when we watch drivers race, there's an element of passion, risk versus reward, a personal connection that I believe will never be experienced with autonomous cars. It's just not the same. But what if AI got so good? Wouldn't it just be a load of cars and computers driving around at literally 100% all the time? There'd be two possibilities. One, the races would be super boring with no edge of your seat action and zero unpredictability. Or two, they'd be full of predetermined wheel banging, drama. I mean, I may as well set up a race on Gran Turismo and watch all the AI race each other. Imagine Canada 2011.
Look at that! It turned in too late.
Brazil 2016 or Germany 2019 with AI cars. What about Gasly's crazy first win?
Pierre Gasly wins the Italian Grand Prix. Oh my.
Or Alonso assisting Ocon with his first win in Hungary.
Esteban Ocon is going to be a Grand Prix winner in Formula One. Ocon wins the Hungarian Grand Prix.
Who cares if a computer could be faster on those days or made the least mistakes in the wet? We love races like that because we care about the people, the personal connection we feel with the drivers, the highs and lows, the moments where people are stressed and pushing themselves to the max is why we're in love with F1.
Here comes Lewis Hamilton though, down the back straight. He's got a slipstream. He almost touches Verstappen. They almost make contact into turn 9. Verstappen stays ahead.
It's not for lines of code in a computer. I think F1 will keep an eye on this series though and adopt some of their tech in the future. AI will probably creep in eventually, according to James Vowles anyway.
I think AI has a place where we're not fearful, in fact quite the opposite. We're going with prototype cars that are changing nearly race on race. The right way of doing that is to use modeling tools that will run millions of race scenarios.
Sounds fine, James, but I wonder how he'd feel if AI took his job. We might be a while away from an AI team principal, but there's definitely a threat that it will replace some other jobs within F1 team. As high-tech and culture-focused as these organizations are, the Billionaire Boys Club won't be treated any differently by AI. Even Verstappen called F1 a shark tank at the start of this month. I think AI is a great white that's trying to get in. It might not be the worst thing because new tech gives teams another area to compete in, but the last thing I want to see is AI taking the place of designer, engineers, or mechanics. And I definitely don't want to see it replace drivers. A bit of AI in an area like race control might improve things though. They tried using it already for track limits, and it actually made it worse to be honest. But with a bit more work, it might make a race at the Red Bull Ring tolerable. Variety prevents dominance in F1, and I think you'll agree we've had our fair share of that recently. We've seen it in the past too. But the debate about which period was the worst was still wide open. So I gathered data points, stats, did some homework, figured out the most dominant period in F1 history and put it all into one video for you to watch. Of course, I share which period I think is the worst, but let's see if you agree.